that?
No, that is all right. It always takes a little while to iron out some of these things. I think we are all online. You know, I don't anticipate using the entire time today. So from my perspective, I think I'd like to kind of just do a check-in quick, if that works with the technology. Talk a little bit about FCI for anyone who isn't familiar with us. I know we've had some conversations over almost over a year now, I believe. Talk a little bit about the scope of work, discuss the business planning model, project roles, and then for those that are going to be a part of the business planning group, maybe schedule some of those meetings just so we can get them all on our calendars. I know, you know, schedules fill up fast, and so I found it best if we can set those meeting times up now, then we can be in a good position to do it. So if everyone has their calendars, we can do that on the call. Otherwise, I can send out some doodle polls, and we can fit times for each of those meetings that way.
We have a calendar.
Okay, good deal. All right. Well, then we'll start off with that, or we'll end with that, I should say, at the end of the call. So maybe just so everyone, we know who all is in the room, we can just get a name, organization, role, and then what's something silly that makes you happy. I can start. I have 2 pictures up here for me. My name is Ben Williams. I'm the Director of Advisory Services at FCI, and I'll be the project manager from the FCI side for this work. And 2 silly things that make me happy. One is playing the ukulele. I am not a very good musician, but it ends up like the instrument always sounds pretty good, regardless, or at least in my opinion, it does. And then another one, there's a Twitter account or website that sends a photo of dogs doing either silly things or sometimes they're dressed up like the one here, and those always make me laugh as I start my day. And so those are 2 silly things for me. Maybe we can pass it to you, Catherine, and then Nadine, and then the group that's with you, Leslie, can go last.
Hi there, everyone. This is Catherine Neiswender. I'm on here at my office. Your dog picture, Ben, reminded me of something I heard on the radio, I don't know, this morning or yesterday, about a woman at Penn State University who dresses up squirrels and takes pictures of them and posts them on a Facebook page about squirrels being dressed up in costumes. So, I don't know, so there's something for everyone to look at. Otherwise, my silliness comes from watching my 3-year-old, or almost 3-year-old, almost on a daily basis. Glad to be here.
This is Nadine Miller. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Great. I'm on the Sustainable Fox Valley Board, and as everyone knows, I'm so super serious that I would say maybe after a couple of glasses of wine, I can tell some pretty funny farm stories.
Farm stories? That's good.
Cows do strange things.
I believe it. So Leslie, who's all in the room with you?
We have Miriam, Connie, myself, and Rhonda.
Great. Would you all like to take a second interview, or if that's too difficult, I don't want to make it overly burdensome.
Okay, I'm Miriam Douglas. I'm on the SFB board. My dog always is doing silly things, and that makes me happy. And I just got back from Maine, and eating lobster makes me very happy.
Great.
Hi, Ben. My name is Connie Grimm. I'm a board member and Connect Committee Chair with Sustainable Fox Valley. Was sitting in my yard yesterday all alone, cracking up, watching my cat chase her tail. And I also enjoy writing parody songs, taking an existing song and putting some kind of Weird Al spin on it.
Ah, cool.
Coming up with the goofy lyrics, yeah. I'm Leslie. I am the acting executive director of Sustainable Fox Valley. And it seems like we're on kind of a theme here with animals. So I have to admit, that's where I go to. Silly animal videos on Facebook or the antics of my dog. Those seem to be the things that make me laugh the easiest.
Great.
Hello, everyone. This is Rhonda. I am a board member and also a student. Following the theme because it's in everybody's mind. My puppy also makes me giggle. And my daughter, who is going to be a little embarrassed that she's across the room here, my daughter makes me laugh, mostly in the evening when she's a little tired and full of dessert. She's quite a silly dancer in the wee hours. Sorry about that, Pumpkin.
How old is your daughter?
She's almost 10, so she's turning a little red in the corner.
Oh, great. Old enough to start getting embarrassed. That's great.
It is great. All right.
Wonderful.
I think that's everyone.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining, this call, and it's great to meet you all, at least virtually, if I haven't met you in person yet. I think for the next meeting, we'll all be able to get together in one place, and I think that'll be really nice. So I think most of you are familiar with FCI in general, so I'll keep just a brief introduction. Originally we were a community development loan fund to nonprofit organizations, so our primary role was providing credit to nonprofit organizations that were really seeking to work with low to moderate income individuals and families. We've since expanded to be statewide almost over 10 years ago, I believe, and part of our track record of success had been the relationships that we built with our borrowing clients, and I think that's really what helped us be successful and also helped our clients. So about 5 years ago in our board strategic planning, they looked to find new ways to provide that technical assistance and relationship building outside of just our borrowing clients. And that's what really started our advisory services department, which is where I am a part of. Originally, it was focused around understanding capacity as an organization and how we can be as effective an organization as possible in reaching our mission. We since kind of broadened and found that as we looked at capacity, one of the key missing elements for many organizations was a clear strategic direction for how they would get to where their mission was taking them. And similarly, likewise, we did a lot of work around financial analysis and business planning, just given our background in finance for most of our staff. In the past several years, we found more and more that for organizations to really be successful, they need to collaborate well with others. You can't reach your mission by yourself, and so how do you take your relationships and really bring them together in a way? And so we changed our mission and vision to really reflect that we're seeking to be an investor, a connector, or an advisor for any organizations and initiatives that really reduce those social, racial, and economic disparities in Wisconsin communities. And I think there's many different lenses that those disparities take place, and so really how do we create a social fabric that's strong and vibrant is a part of what we seek to do. We're a nonprofit ourselves, and so we also, aside from our advising and lending, seek investments in organizations that we then use either for operations or for pooling into our loan fund. We merged with a local grassroots grant maker, Wisconsin Community Fund, in 2012 so that we could provide both investments through granting, investments through actual loans, and investments through our advising services together to really bring that picture. And then the last role that we play is we try to support as much research as possible around understanding the issues that we see in the sector, as well as how we can be more effective as organizations together. So that's just a quick pitch about FCI. In terms of the next step, and I'll send out as some follow-up just the scope of work that was kind of designed as we came about this grant-making process, and then just kind of go through that in detail. That'll be the most of today's session before we get into those next steps. If you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to interrupt me. I'm more than happy to take a second to explain it more, but I'll start at just a high level. And largely, we've kind of broken it into 4 different phases. The first, the design and assess, is really where we're building up the vision of what we're looking at and how are we going to be moving forward and creating that framework for the business plan. And then that research and review phase, this will really be in October and November, is where we start creating some screens for understanding what opportunities, looking at the parameters of the types of options that we could pursue, and really taking a look at the hypotheses of our assumptions that we make in our business planning, and how can we test those to make sure that our business plan is viable and can be effective. That third phase largely is around evaluating that, and so how do we review our, the financials, potential partnerships, looking at where are the key risks in our business plan and strategies, and how can we potentially mitigate those. I think that is really where, you know, the work kind of hits the road, and we want to make sure we're testing these ideas in some best case situations so that we're making the best types of the decisions. You know, we operate in such a fluid environment. That phase is really where we want to make sure we have some means of testing and really going from there. The last phase in December, we'll have 2 more meetings, and this will really be around elaborating on those plans of what models seem to fit best and what would that look like. How do we make sure that we implement a plan that will take us from where we are today to that desired end goal. So these next 2 slides are a little bit more detail on each of those phases, and so really I think we'll have 1 meeting sometime in September ideally where we'll get to work, and I'll have some homework that we'll be sending out for just getting prepared for it, but this is really where we're going to develop an initial context for the plan and start building out those tools around what we see in the environment, what we think are our initial assumptions. We'll start getting into that in-depth analysis of some of the financial side and the cost structure so that when we're making some revisions and tweaks and looking at potential alternatives, we keep all of those things and pictures in mind. The research and review phase, again, this is where we start looking at summarizing some of these considerations and parameters, and so we can look at a couple different options and see what would make the most sense. And if when we're actually doing the work, if we have to make shifts, sometimes going back to the drawing board of what we thought of before can create some new inspiration for where else to move. And then that 3rd and 4th phase, again, there's 2 meetings in each of these stages, and this is really where we're looking at developing those strategies to make sure we're effective. What are those risks and mitigations that we need to consider, and really elaborating on those to make sure that we can be effective. I think what we've found is all the planning in the world will only get you so far before you consider, okay, once we're actually doing the work, how do we make sure we're being effective, and how do we pivot and change when necessary? And so what are those, you know, warning signs that, okay, this might not be the most effective? And so we'll try to build in a lot of that work around iterating our plan as we go, but we also have to know that if we do need to make shifts, how do we do that in a wise way? And so that's really going to be a common theme as we move through these stages. I want to talk a little bit about the business planning model, and some of this will be within the proposal, but I just want to make sure that we have some clarity on like what we're trying to achieve, what is in a business plan, and kind of what we're looking to do. And so the way that we define business planning is really the test of a proposition that some sort of undertaking, could be a program, it could be a partnership, it could be a new venture, it could be just growing, or it could be a whole organizational business plan, is economically and operationally viable. What's missing in this definition is around that mission goal, and so we keep that as something that we'll be looking at, but really the business plan is around how do we make sure that we can actually get this work done. I think a lot of times there's confusion when we look at business planning versus strategy and what that real difference is. And so when we use those terms, we consider strategic planning really being the process of looking at potential options. Do I want to go this direction, or do I want to go a different direction? And so that's directionally, how are we going to reach our mission and vision? Business planning is saying, okay, this is where we want to go. There's many different ways that we can get there. And so how do we do that in a way that will be sustainable for us as an organization and deliver the most mission impact? I think oftentimes there's a bit of strategy development that goes into the business planning as we look at what's possible. There'll be some direction setting, but typically the difference here is the business planning is getting into the nuts and bolts of how are we going to be effective and how are we going to build an organization that can last. Oftentimes in a traditional business planning framework and in a lot of our previous work, we take an approach where there's, the executive summary or the short 1 to 4 page kind of, this is big picture, this is what you'd lead with. We want to make sure we cover our mission, vision, and desired impact. What are we actually doing? Our programming. What is the market that we're operating in? How do we operate and manage this effort? Are there other collaborative organizations that we need to be working with in order to be successful? How are we reaching and touching these individuals? And then really where FCI's background comes in is how do we make sure that we have the financial projections well set and understood, not just around costs, which are rather easy to estimate, but around revenues and likelihood, and make sure that we have a good sense that this is possible. And that's really where the evaluation and measurement of impact are key. This is how we make sure that we're looking at risks and potential alternate scenarios and understand, well, if things change, and they always do, as I'm sure, from my experience with Sustainable Fox Valley, I think you've navigated a lot of different opportunities already, and so how do we make sure that we're looking at those risks as we move forward and come to a sensible approach? One thing, and this was included in the appendix of our proposal, was there's a model of looking at business planning that's traditionally been done in highly innovative sectors around new development, often web-based or technology-based, where they translate all of these different areas onto a single page or a canvas to really describe all of those areas of a business model. In our previous work, we've often done this near the end of the process as a way to say, okay, now we've had all these assumptions and all this pre-work. How do we make it into a way that we can digest it and communicate to someone clearly? But we found more and more that there's a lot of opportunity if you start with this single page and then you build out from the conversations and discussions and tests the rest of the business plan. You end up building all of these parts that we discussed in the key business plan framework, but starting with this high-level summary, and I'll walk through what this could look like. But we found this to really help shift things because you can have a whole series of these different ideas, and this really brings it together. I think the other thing that this does is it's a great way to tell your story. And so your business model is really how are we going to get an impact both on the social side as well as make sure that our organization can cover its costs and be sustainable. And this business model canvas is a really clever way to kind of communicate that as a whole. So I'll walk through it as a quick illustration of kind of how this works, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we go into detail in our business planning is using this as a framework to build out our work together. And so, it starts with your clients. So who are we seeking to reach with our programs and works? And unlike the for-profit sector, the technical term is a multi-sided model, but we serve both our recipients and constituents in the community as well as those that are funding our services and work, and it's not often the same people. And so there's some more nuance to the nonprofit world when we look at our business models than what's just in the for-profit. But if we take those client segments and say who are those stakeholders, whether they be clients, customers if they're actually paying for work, the volunteers and participants, or investors and philanthropists, how do we reach them? What is our proposition that we're giving them? This is really around the programs and services we're delivering. And what are those problems and challenges of our clients that we're seeking to solve? So what's the value that we're creating? That's the value proposition. So what's the benefit that we're getting? From there, you have the channels that how you reach them. And so in this example, I believe the case is around a child education program. And so they write grants to donors, and they reach their end recipients, which are youth, through community centers. And so this is kind of the channels that they reach those client customers and segments. And from there, you have certain key relationships that you're building. So with the donors, they may be on advisory roles. For the recipients, it may be on a one-on-one or a group tutoring. So you'd want to kind of elaborate on what types of relationships you're trying to create with each one here. From there, you're getting some outcome streams. So in the for-profit world, this is the revenue. So in a normal business, this would be they're paying for the services. With nonprofits, it's a little more complicated. So there's a couple layers, and they're trying to be colored just so you can see them by segment. But there's the revenue that we're getting from our donors, and then there's the mission impact that we're getting from our recipient. And that all is looped through the programs that we're giving. And that mission impact is what leads us to be able to provide more compelling narratives in our grants to donors, and it's a cycle that builds and grows from there. And so, at this point, you're kind of halfway through this model, and it's really everything that we're doing on the outside. And so this is really, what's happening on the customer side. On the other side of the model is what's happening in the back rooms and the infrastructure of the agency to make sure that we can do this. And so it starts with what are those activities that we're providing. And so in this case, it could be tutoring, it could be grant writing, It could be referral systems that we're providing. So these are the key things that we need to be doing to be providing our services. There's also the resources. These are the assets that we have in terms of what is needed to really build that engagement. And so in this case, the community center sites, the curriculum that we're delivering, these are the assets that we need in order to do that. And particularly with nonprofits, there's the partners that are providing those services. So in this case, how are we working with the school district for referrals, volunteers and tutoring, community centers for their sites and partnerships, and often the network that kind of brings everything together. We want to make sure that we have this all clearly identified and laid out. And lastly, something that all business plans have to focus on quite a bit is that cost structure. And so what does it cost to build that curriculum, to rent those sites, to have those tutor fees, everything that it takes to sustain the organization. And I think what makes these canvases so clear is it covers all of those topic points that we mentioned before, but you can communicate it as a story on a clear area. And what's valuable about it is if it's very challenging to describe what you're doing, then you might not have thought through all of those assumptions. If you can clearly say, this is what we're expecting, and this is how we're going to get there, and this is what we're going to do in a clear diagram, it really shows succinctness that you've really thought through and described everything that you need to do. And so together, with this business model canvas, you really have a sense of the infrastructure on the left side, the offering of what you're provided on the right to stakeholders in the community. And so this is just, I want to give a brief walkthrough. As part of the follow-up, there's a much better description from the original creators of the business model canvas. Alex, I believe his last name starts with an O. It's like Osterwalder. But this is all based on some research in the for-profit sector, and it's increasingly becoming common to use in the nonprofit sector because it provides that pitch and understanding. And what's really strong about it is for each of those areas that you add kind of a bucket to, so I'll step back one slide, you can make assumptions about why we think this is going to work, or how is the client segment going to value what we're doing, and how do we move forward. And it's those conversations about why we think this is going to happen like this is kind of like a logic model for our business plan that we can start elaborating on what would become the content of the full plan. And so I think if we're comfortable with it, I think this model as a way to facilitate our way through the business planning steps can be a very valuable way to move through this exercise. As I mentioned before, in some of our previous work, we've done it at the end of the project once we've kind of gone through the thinking. But I think what you miss there is the opportunity to test those assumptions early on and really move through things quicker, as opposed to finding at the end when you put it all together, you're like, oh, wait, there's something missing here that really doesn't make sense. I think the most important part for us and for most business plans that are starting from newer organizations is that relationship between the client segments and the value proposition. So what's compelling about what we're doing? And so there's some additional tools and work that we can look into around understanding, our value proposition. What are the relevant goals and activities from the client's perspective? And then what do we think that they need to achieve them or overcome their barriers? And by really thinking it from this perspective, we can create some assumptions around what we believe to be what the clients are looking for, and we can test that through interviews and conversations to really understand how close on base we are. And from that, we can connect what we're trying to provide with the clients and how are we adding value or reducing disparities, however the means may be, to really get there. And so this way, the business planning tool can become a little bit more clever in terms of being able to iterate and change what we're seeking to do. So I've moved through this at a rapid pace. Normally in a workshop we would take 3 hours to really go through and build this. The one pleasant thing is because it's so simplified onto a single page, you can draft your ideas rather quickly. Oh, did someone join us? Hello? Oh, maybe it was just
hello? Julie's
Hi there.
here. Can you hear me? Hi.
Hi, Julie. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Keep going. I'm with you. I was actually listening on the phone a bit before I got the computer to work, so just, you can keep going.
That is all right. Thank you very much. If you have questions, we've been recording this, and we'll be sure to follow up. You can just send an email or talk, and we can connect.
Okay.
So where I was saying is the model itself you can build out to look at it within 20 to 30 minutes. You can draft an initial set of assumptions from this, and you can start testing it very quickly. And I think this differs rather dramatically from traditional business planning, where there's a lot of work going into building all of the business case for why we'll be successful before we actually get out there to test it. And I think this is very valuable in more entrepreneurial ventures, but for nonprofits, I think it's a valuable way to move, because oftentimes the comfort with risk is so low that you want to make sure that you've thought through and really tested out as many assumptions as possible before you're actually doing the work. Particularly in human services, I think that's just as true here, is that the risk of having unhappy clients in this case is so great that you really want to avoid that as much as possible by using a framework that can let you iterate to that kind of timing and plan. So before I move into some of the project roles and expectations, are there any questions? I know I've gone through this really quickly. There's a couple videos that I'll send out. I sent these to Rhonda just so she had some reference. Oh, thank you. I just got to note that the phone is breaking up a bit. I'll try to move forward. If you still have any challenges hearing me, please let me know. And so are there any questions? Yeah.
Is Julie on both the phone and the speakers? That could be
That's
why we're getting.
Yeah.
No, I'm off the phone now. I'm just on my computer.
Okay.
Okay, great. Maybe unless you want to, if there's something you want to say or bring up, please do. Otherwise, maybe mute mute your line until you do. I think that might help with the feedback. Okay. I think that sounds better.
Wait, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I need to do something so I'm not making noise. Is that what you're saying?
If you mute your speakers,
Okay.
Whatever the microphone on your computer is, not your speakers, because then you wouldn't be able to hear us. And then if there's anything that you'd like to say, please do jump in.
Yeah, I just found it. So I'm
Perfect. So after I just muted Julie, or she muted herself, are there any questions now, or should we move forward?
We're voting to move forward.
All right, well, move forward we shall. And so I think this project is going to be really interesting for a variety of reasons. I'll talk a little bit about the role that FCI typically plays in the client, and then I think there's some unique things that we can discuss about how we're going to be building this together as a team. So typically the role that we have on these projects is really looking at the financial projections, evaluating partnership strategies and the financial sustainability side, and the risk assessment, so a lot of the analytics of the business plan. And then what FCI needs from the team that will be going through this is the expertise in developing what options are out there. What could we be doing differently? What would we look at and what would we see? In particular, this is critical around developing those assumptions for the financial and workload, as well as what kind of impact we think these things could have. And I think this model of using a canvas is a great way because it creates questions automatically by saying, so if this is what we think we're targeting to do, we can ask a testable hypothesis for each one. We'll want opinions on projections, models, and writing. And I think the most important is on decisions for how we envision success and what the best option is for the organization. And so when we do our work, I think sometimes there's an expectation that we are here to do the writing and then we deliver a product to you. But FCI and just in general, all of our work, we build things together. And we want to make sure that that's clear up front, that we'll be doing a lot of work in these meetings of thinking through and working through each of these steps, and between them, we'll bring it to the next set of the conversations, and things will facilitate as we go through it. And so it's really a team-based approach. I think what's really going to be fun about this is Rhonda is, as a student, and I'm not sure exactly what the program is through, is working on acting as a consultant as well. And so I think this provides a great experience for her to be both part of Sustainable Fox Valley on the board member side, but also going to be delivering the work together. And so we've kind of established a set of plans, and I'll talk about that when we schedule the meetings, but we'll be working as a partner team in both consulting and doing the work throughout. So it's going to be a shared and kind of mutual process, and I think it's really building that kind of co-developing partnership to a new level. And so I'm personally, I hope Rhonda's excited as well, but I think this will be a really fun way for us to build it. And the real goal of doing this, besides from just the experience, is that it provides the organization with the considerations and tools and ability to have those conversations around strategically and business model-wise, what is it that can make us successful? And we found that in our other project work, this really helps those things continue. Once I leave, obviously Rhonda will still be on the board, so she'll be able to be very strong in terms of backing on some of the concepts. But as a team, you have a much greater strength and capacity to make shifts as the market changes or new opportunities present themselves that weren't here before. And so that's, I think, what excites me the most about these types of projects is it's a great opportunity to think through what can be and then really get into the grid of how we do it well. And then I think that iteration and change over the process is the other key part. And so after, I'll send out some links with a couple of videos related to this for next steps. There will also be a list of a large number of documents that we'll talk about. But I wanted to highlight just a couple things on what we're hoping to have, in terms of the planning discussion, just to get you thinking about it once we move into that next step. And that's, what's the focus of these business planning efforts? I think some of this is clear, but this is going to be a part of our first meeting, is to have a conversation around that. What's the strategic intent, just to clarify again, where's the strategic direction that we're seeking to go that will then inform this business planning? What kinds of questions do we need to answer or decisions do we need to make? And so what are those things that we don't know yet or we are uncertain of that we want to make sure that in the course of our planning that we do so? So the more that we can identify these up front, the easier it will be to build into the model some considerations around it. Again, the Canvas will help with some of it in terms of creating more questions for each of our assumptions, but just things to consider. What information is available and what do we need to make these decisions? What kind of things would lead us to say, yes, this is exactly what we need to know and what to do? Lastly, in terms of audience, I think the business plan is both an internal document for planning and purposes on your end, but it's also a tool that can be used for communication, for really marketing yourselves and your organization, as well as for funding proposals. And so the more clear we are up front about what we're seeking to have this plan do, and oftentimes it may be that we'll have the canvases that we'll be creating as we go, but there's also the documents that really show all the thinking and thought process that went into everything. And so some of that will be internal only, I think, but then there's other parts that you might want to say, oh, funder A, this is our detailed plan beyond this kind of introduction. And so making sure that we have all of that in mind is key. And then lastly, who will approve of the final decisions and documents? So how do we move forward on this? And so I think we'll be looking at a lot of different potential models for how we can be successful, but thinking through what are those next steps and decisions. A lot of the work we've been doing on business planning have been on collaborative ventures where there's multiple parties in the room. That may not be as much of an issue here as it would be in other cases, but just making sure we're clear on how decisions will get made and what to do as you go forward. I think it's valuable to have those conversations up front. And so the list of documents, I think most of these are pretty clear. It's basically anything and everything is on this list. Organizational chart, board rosters. I think a lot of our relationship with Sustainable Fox Valley and conversations we've had over the past, we have a lot of this information already, but just to make sure that we're clear on any existing work. I know there's a lot of work around scenario planning that was done earlier in the spring. Operational plans if there exist, or the current strategic ideas, the thoughts, narratives on what's going on. Fund development plans or proposals and grants that you've written in the past. Budgets as they exist now. Board meeting minutes are a really useful way for us to see kind of what the conversations that are going on. And then number O, or letter O, I should say, at the bottom, anything else you think would be helpful. This is the most important thing to us is what do you think we should know? I want to make sure that even though I'm newer to the organization, I don't want to slow down our process with being just unaware of what's going on. And so the more things that you find helpful, I think the better. Again, I'll send this out as a list to the follow-up to the call. And then we can kind of have that, ideally we can have most of those things in place that we do have before our first meeting. So we've been on the call, we started a little bit behind schedule, but we've been going pretty strong for about 30 minutes now. Are there any questions?
When do we get started? This is very exciting.
That is my next step. And so, from my end, I'll provide the background material and files. I think we have set some meeting dates now. The videos on the business model and Canvas are the things that I'll send. I think that just kind of elucidate the model and the background and how it can be used in a pretty concise fashion. And so as we look at dates, these are color-coded by the sessions. The meetings that I had planned on attending were, the first meeting, ideally we can kick off sometime in September. The second meeting to help keep us going. I can join virtually for the third meeting and the fifth and sixth, but those times where it says SCI and Sustainable Fox Valley as well, I'll be in the room. And then the others, Rhonda will be leading the conversation, but we'll both work through all of these projects or meeting steps together as we develop it. So if everyone, I'm not sure if it's everyone on the line or if it's a certain subsection that's on the business planning group. One thing I didn't bring up before is that even if you're not on the planning group, there are going to be points in time, whether it be at board meetings or other conversations, where we're going to look for feedback. And I think the members that are outside of the group actually have the best vision towards what they think is going on and what they see, and whether what we're developing in the meetings is really reflecting what they have. We'll also be reaching out to others that are supporters of the organization or participants to get their feedback as well. But I'm not sure exactly who all is on, but this is really the last step for the plan, is really setting those dates and times. And so I'm going to try to open up my calendar. In terms of a September meeting date for that first session, I'm wondering if maybe the middle of September, maybe either Friday, September 19th, Monday, September 22nd, Friday, September 26th. All those days are open for me. Again, these are we typically schedule 3-hour meetings just to really get as much done as possible without being so overwhelming. We can kind of evaluate if that doesn't sound like a good amount of use of the time resources. If you'd rather have more meetings, we can look at modeling it different. But I think at least for the first one, just so we can make some real progress, doing it that way is typically what we find to be most successful.
So I want to defer as much as we can to Rhonda on her schedule, since she's doing.
Yes, Rhonda will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So Rhonda, I'm not sure if Mondays and Fridays, we can look for other days too. Is there certain times of day that work well for you, or certain dates that are better or worse?
Always mornings are going to be best. Morning.
Okay,
starting
great.
After 8. Any day of the week morning, starting at 8:30.
So if we said, okay. So for that first one, would September 19th work out, or 20?
Yeah, September 19th does work out for me. So can we just back up 1 second? I just want to get the end date on this clear, because I don't have the grant in front of me or our contract with you on the end date of when this will be, and just make sure that we have that projection correct when if we need to move up a week or.
That's a great note. When is the deadline for getting things done?
I need to have a business plan turned in, a final project turned in Friday, December 12th. And it looks like my I just got this information yesterday, so I'm going to confirm it, which will start on September 2nd. But it looks to be that I'll need a draft completed by Friday, December 5th.
So the draft
So
by
are
December 5th,
Yeah, the
and the
draft
final
will
by
be
the next week?
correct.
Okay.
Is that what we were working towards? Is it December 12th?
Yeah, I think that can work just fine. We may end up moving, maybe having 3 meetings in either October or November. I think the one thing about the business model canvas that makes it very useful is that you can start really accelerating into looking at that full picture rather quickly. And so I think that shouldn't be a problem at all. So if we keep that in mind, instead, maybe we want to have the final meeting as a group, and so that you can have a draft that really reflects that final picture, and then you can take the feedback, have it be a little bit more on the less on the conceptual and more on that. So if we had that final meeting, on December 3rd or 4th, to kind of give you that space. Does that seem like that would be enough runway?
I hope so. I've been under pressure, so I should work.
All right.
Say December 3rd for that final meeting.
December 3rd final meeting. Okay. And you said 8:30.
This is Nadine. That is the Wisconsin State Sustainable Business Conference. I don't know if a number of us have to go to that. I've got it as a tentative on my calendar.
What conference?
Sustainable Business Conference.
In Madison?
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee this year. Is it the 3rd and the 4th meeting, or just the 3rd?
Just the 3rd. It's a one-day meeting. And I don't know if anybody else goes to it. Typically, we have a good-sized group from Fox.
Oh, if we moved it to have the last meeting on December 1st, that's a Monday, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will send out calendar holds for this, for each one. So if we move back from December 1st, if we looked at in November having a meeting on the 18th, 19th, or 21st, are any of those days open? So that's a Tuesday the 18th, Wednesday the 19th, or Friday the 21st.
Do you want to do a regular date like the Friday mornings?
That would work fine for me.
Is it hard though for you, Bennett? You have to drive up here?
Well, on the 6th meeting, I won't be there. I'll be there for the final. So on the calendar, I'll be there for meeting number 7, number 4, numbers 2 and 3 in person, and then I'll be joining on the phone for for all of them that I'm not there in person.
Okay. So December, meeting 6. Okay, we're backwards here. Meeting 7, meeting 6 will be internal. And we'll work that out, I guess, amongst ourselves here. Let's maybe focus on getting your meetings on the schedule first.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that we generally give ourselves like the iteration time. So if we're doing that one sometime in that November 18th through, I don't know, Thanksgiving is the following week, so sometime between there, I'll just place a hold for that. So if we have meeting number 5, maybe on November, the week before that, so November 10th or 11th. So if we did a meeting on November 6th or 7th, are either of those days available? That'd be a Thursday or a Friday.
I'm sorry, Ben, could you please repeat that?
So would Thursday or Friday, November 6th and 7 work out, either one of those days?
I'm going to say November 6th, Thursday. Anybody else?
Okay.
November 6th?
Yep. All right.
And which meeting is that?
That is meeting number 4. I'm sorry, I think I accidentally clicked something so that it paused my screen. So hopefully you can see I've been trying to enter some days and times now. And so we're looking now to, we have 3 meetings in November, which will seem really fast and right in a row, but I think that can really generate a lot of momentum and progress. And so typically we find that to work rather well. And then between the meetings, we just want to make sure that Rhonda and I have enough time. If there's information and insights that need to be gathered, we'll have to plan for it. But I think as a tentative schedule, this looks like it would work well. If we had a meeting in late October, perhaps the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, would any of those days work out?
The 23rd and 24th do that. That's the district goal. I would have to say the 22nd. I'll have kids home Thursday and Friday.
Okay, so the 22nd works?
For 22nd?
That's better for me too.
And so then if we move to meeting number 2, if we gave maybe October 8th, 9th, or 10th, because I think between the 2nd and 3rd meeting we'll really where we need to gather some of the financial stuff, and that can take a little bit of time. So if we give 2 weeks there, I think we'll be good.
I could say the 8th or 9th. Anybody else? Down the 10th.
Neither works for me.
8th.
8th is best?
8th.
Yes.
And then the first meeting, so this looks like it'll work out well in terms of timing from my perspective. If we did it Friday, September 19th, that would be the earliest for me. We could also do Monday the 22nd or Friday the 26th.
That Monday doesn't work for me. I'm out of state.
We have a whole bunch of time exchange to get ready for at the 16th. I don't know that we'll get our homework done by the 19th.
So does the 26th sound best?
I have both days open. I just want to make sure that
Wanda's voting for the 19th. I'm voting for the 19th because I'm hearing
Oh,
like
19th.
board going out and they want some reviews.
make it. The 19th works.
19th?
Yeah.
Okay, and so tentatively, so there's 2 meetings, and maybe just while we're all on the phone together, we can get them together on in November. And so these are ones that Rhonda will be leading. I'll be on virtually. I'll mark down the times that I'm available. So for the first one, November 10th or 11th, or November 18, 19, 21, or 24, 25, 26. That's the week of Thanksgiving, but either of those sets of times could work. So for maybe starting with the 5th, does the 10th or 11th work out, or should we move to the next week?
Works.
11th?
We're talking November.
11th?
Yeah, Mondays are.
Okay. And then 18th, was 18th for 1 week later, or should we go 2 weeks out?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. So this will feel, I think, one thing that is both fun and a little bit challenging is there's a lot of uncertainty as we're starting to make these plans and go through it. So it'll feel kind of rapid, but that's a good thing because that means that we're moving at a pace where we're really challenging ourselves, and we can be very creative with it while we have some time to still reflect and move through it. I personally am really excited about this project for you, and I think this will be a fun way to really look through it. So I will send out calendar invites. Should I send them out to everyone on the call just so that it's on everyone's note?
Sure.
and then just as an FYI, and then we can move from there. I will be out of the office tomorrow, but if there's any other questions, please don't hesitate. Email tends to be best to reach because I'm often in meetings during good chunks of the days. But I think if anything comes up, do let us know. Otherwise, I'm really excited. And Rhonda, maybe we can talk offline after, on another phone chat about how we can best work together so we're both prepared and ready to facilitate.
Absolutely.
Great.
And
All
this is Nadine. I think we need to add Marty Wheeler to the invite list. She's on the call. And Leslie, is Jamie going to participate in the process, or will he be finished by then?
I do not know. I'll put that ball in your court to talk with him.
Okay.
Okay. We'll do that. And pardon me?
I'm sorry, Beth. I was just wanting to confirm these meetings are going to be attended by those who are going to be in the business planning work group, correct?
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily need to be. It doesn't need to be every board member who's not planning on attending.
Exactly. Right. One thing that we can do, and we can talk about it in our first meeting, is how we want to keep everyone looped in. And so whether it's at board meetings or just an update after each meeting on where we got to, where we're at, so that they're still engaged in the process.
Okay.
But yes, this would be for the business planning.
Okay.
Is there a good location to meet? I guess I didn't confirm that when we were setting up days and times.
Well, right now 4 of us are in the community room next to our offices, which we can use anytime we reserve it. It's a nice space, has a screen.
Great. That's all we need. Space to think and kind of chat. So we'll plan on that.
Okay.
Wonderful. All right, well, I owe you all follow-ups of the meeting invites. I hope to get those to you probably by the end of today. I'll send out this PowerPoint, a list of those documents to receive, and then a couple of videos. I think one's 2 minutes long and one's 5 or 6 minutes long, but it helps kind of introduce kind of the storytelling of how this can work as we move through using that model. I try to be as flexible as possible, and so if we feel like certain things aren't working or are working better, I want to make sure that we have an open door to talk about any of those things and make sure that we're designing something that's effective for everyone. And so I'm just going to put out that invite now. If there's anything that you'd like to see more of or less of or anything different, don't hesitate to tell us.
Great. Yeah. Exciting stuff.
All right. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful extended weekend. And for anyone who has kids going back to school, good luck.
Thanks,
Get everything ready to go.
Thanks, Ben.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks.